All right. Welcome everyone back to the Addiction Nutritionist podcast. I'm really excited to introduce you today to my very first client spotlight episode. This is going to be where we have somebody that I've worked with one-on-one and we get into it. We talk about your story. We talk about what led you to seeking out nutrition coaching in the first place. What did that process feel like to you? And what are some of the results that you've had? So I have with me today my client, Doug Fingliss. And I'm going to formally introduce Doug to you in just a minute. But the first thing that we're going to do is talk about one of Doug's favorite foods, which is steak, which is our food sponsor for today. So if you're just joining us and you've never listened before, I don't have a real sponsor. And so we thought it would be super fun to do like a food sponsor for every episode. And what I like to do when I have a guest on is kind of ask them what their 3 favorite foods are. And we use one of those as our food sponsors for the week. So I was really excited when Doug told me that steak was on his list, because if you have listened to this podcast before, you know what a big fan of steak and beef that I am. And so it gives me an opportunity to take a deeper dive and talk more about the amazing health benefits of steak. So we're going to do that. And then I will formally introduce you to my guest, Doug. So as a lot of you know, steak is a great source of protein. I think most people probably know that it is a protein. It is a complete protein, which means that it has all 9 of the essential amino acids in it. So you don't necessarily have to be combining foods to get access to that complete protein if you're eating a piece of steak. And that's really the same whether you're eating ribeye or filet or whatever. And if you've listened to this podcast before, you know the utmost importance of consuming amino acids. Amino acids are the foundation of making our mood regulating neurotransmitters like serotonin and endorphins and dopamine. And so they're critical for mental health. Just 3.5 ounces of steak gives you about 20 grams of protein, which is amazing. We have studies that show us, there's a little bit of controversy around this, but we basically have a belief that somewhere between 20 and 30 grams of protein at one sit down meal is about all that somebody can absorb. So if you're doing like massive amounts of protein in one sitting, you're probably not gaining much benefit from that. But I would say 20 to 30 grams of protein in one sit down meal is like ideal. Like it doesn't get much better than that. Steak is a really great source of iron. But a lot of people don't know there's 2 different types of iron. There's heme iron and non-heme iron. Heme iron you primarily get from animal-based sources, and it is the most bioavailable form of iron. Iron's important for a lot of reasons, one of them being energy production, but it also you need it to prevent anemia, which is actually really common in the recovery community. I work in some local detox centers, and you will often see folks coming through with anemia. So great way to get bioavailable iron. I think everybody probably knows that steak is good for building up muscle. That's kind of a given, but it is chock full of minerals. When we hear people talk about minerals, we're probably more inclined to think about plants, but beef is like one of the best places you can get all of those minerals. I mean, it's got calcium, copper, iron, like we said, magnesium, manganese, potassium, really important for lowering blood pressure or managing healthy blood pressure levels. It has phosphorus, which is really important for bone, but also for keeping the enamel on your teeth. So the American Dental Association actually backs, their clients or their patients eating beef because it is such a great source of phosphorus for your teeth health and your oral health. So crazy. And it also has a lot of selenium and zinc, super important minerals. Zinc is important for creating the acid in our stomach that helps us to break down steak, really important. Selenium's really supportive of our thyroid. So much good stuff. And if you kind of take that extra step further and you get grass-fed beef or grass-fed steak, you have the added benefit of having more omega-3 fatty acids, which is one of those fats that we refer to as a healthy fat. It is critical for your brain, but also in relationship to recovery, omega-3 has been shown, it's been proven in studies to reduce cravings for drugs and alcohol. And so if you're taking it in supplement form, that's great, but you can also just eat beef and get access to that omega-3. And that can have a dramatic effect on a reduction of cravings for drugs and alcohol. And it has other really healthy fats in it as well. One of them being CLA. And it's got the B vitamins, which we talk about a lot in recovery and mental health. It's got B6, B12, B3, B2, B5, but B6 and B12 specifically, really, really important for mental health. We know that the B vitamins as a whole are important for helping convert our food into energy. And all these other ingredients like carnosine and creatine, great for brain function and energy production. It's got L-carnitine, which is beneficial for weight management. It also has taurine, which is just a naturally occurring amino acid, but it has anticonvulsant properties. They actually put taurine in energy drinks because they'll tell you, oh, it just like chills you out. But taurine, it does chill you out. And it's a safe and naturally occurring amino acid, but they put it in energy drinks because they're trying to prevent you from having a seizure from all the caffeine and sugar that are actually in there. And then lastly, glutathione. It's a great source of glutathione, which is the body's master antioxidant. If you're eating rich colored berries and that sort of thing, you're getting antioxidants from your food, but your body makes one on its own. It's the most powerful of the bunch. It's called glutathione, and it's super important. And I'll just close with talking about steak. That just briefly, as I was doing research about beef in general, there was a study that popped up that the study was done on women, and it showed that women who ate less than the daily recommended amount of beef had twice the levels of depression, including diagnosis of major depressive disorder, as well as a double risk, or whatever you would say, for having anxiety. So we know there's so many benefits to eating beef, but that's just a few of them. What's your favorite form of steak? Because you did say it was steak, but I didn't get a chance to ask you, like, okay, if you had to like wave a magic wand and put like the most perfect piece of beef on your plate, what would it be?
Well, this is absolutely fantastic. First of all, I didn't know all of those things about steak coming into this.
Yeah.
Growing up in my house, my father is a big proponent of red meat.
Mm-hmm.
The joy that he gets from red meat is fun to watch. Let's put it that way. To make my father proud of me, and also because it is my favorite cut of steak, I have to go with a porterhouse steak. It is just the king of all of the steaks, where you get that little bit of tenderloin, and then you get the other piece, and there's a nice bone involved. It is an experience eating a good porterhouse steak.
Oh man, amen. I particularly like filet myself, but the benefits of eating meat off the bone in particular just can't be underscored. They're just so important. You get access to all of these nutrients that Americans aren't really getting very much because so many of us aren't eating meat off the bone, things like glycine and that sort of thing, really good stuff for your joints. So yeah, fantastic. Well, I'm so excited that we get to make Doug's dad proud. Hi, Doug's dad, if you're listening.
It's going to be fantastic. He's going to be so happy to hear how healthy steak is. And now he can use that against my mom when she says, "You're eating too much red meat, Pat."
Oh man, that's so funny. Yeah, and there is a lot of controversy out there about red meat and that sort of thing. But if you really dig deep into it, it shows that a lot of people that are eating high red meat diets are not getting as much exercise. They're not getting as much vegetable intake. So when you're eating beef and you're balancing it out with a healthy lifestyle and getting plenty of greens and that sort of thing, it absolutely has all these health benefits. So yeah, oh man, so great. All right, so I want to formally introduce you to my guest, Doug, today. I'm going to read you his bio. It's fun, and I just love it. So Doug Fingliss is an ordinary person, happy in life, although it wasn't always that way. Doug is a husband, artist, musician, information technologist, entrepreneur, small business owner, skateboarder, runner, son, friend, and a myriad of other roles and responsibilities involved with being a human. Nowadays, Doug is proudly imperfect, and an important trait he has learned to embrace. He's currently working on a number of projects, including the Skate Create video project. I'm excited to talk about that today. The ongoing Tiverton Trails Art Gallery. Doug lives in Rhode Island, by the way. And a Sobering Sunrises coffee table book, just to name a few. Although he is now a recluse from social media, yeah, me too, you can still connect with him on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, MapMyRun, Relive. I'm not sure if that's Relive or
Yeah, Relive.
Okay, Relive. I'll have to ask you about that.
Sure.
Or at his rarely updated blog at fingliss.com. That's FINGLISS.com. So one of the things I was excited about when we first met was that you lived in Rhode Island, because I'm from New Hampshire and spent tons of time growing up actually in the New Bedford, Massachusetts area where most of my family still is. So we had that connection, but I never got to ask you this. Whenever I say hi, Doug, I have to fight the urge to say it in the voice of Patty Mayonnaise. Do you remember? Do you remember that
The
Nickelodeon show,
Nickelodeon
Doug?
cartoon. I do. Yes. Yep.
I loved that show as a kid, and my sister and I would impersonate Patty Mayonnaise all the time. So sometimes I'm like fearful, like I'm actually I'm gonna say that in Patty Mayonnaise's voice.
Oh, that's okay. That's great. My ex-wife was affectionately known as Allie Mayonnaise.
Oh,
Our
no
friend group
way.
used to call her that. Yep, because of that show. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's not why she left me, but
Yeah, I would imagine not. Oh my gosh, so funny.
yeah.
Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Like, I don't even know how you found me. It was probably social media. You could talk about that if you want, but
Sure.
what's the backstory with you, and what led you to want to seek out nutrition coaching, maybe especially from somebody that had experience working with people in recovery?
Sure. Yeah, I'll give sort of an abridged version. Otherwise, we'll be sitting here talking for
Yeah.
several hours. But uh, about 7 years ago, coming up on 7 years, February 9th will be my sobriety anniversary.
Nice.
I had a huge crash in life. I found myself at the end of my drinking career, well over 331 pounds. That was the last time I weighed myself, so I don't know how bad it got following that. And I had really destroyed myself with alcohol. I was suffering from ascites. I was swollen all over my body. Fluid had gotten into my lungs. I was having a hard time breathing just at rest. I couldn't even lay down those last few months. And through a series of events, wound up in the hospitals, had quite an extended stay there, and found myself after that living with my parents with very little understanding of why I couldn't stop, you know. And it's been a road to recovery since then. I got myself into the AA program. I know there are lots of different programs available out there for people. This one happened to work for me. It's been one of the best things that I've done in my life, and it brought me back to having some sense of spirituality and some sense of understanding about getting balance in my life. So at that point in time, I was still very much a crazy person those first couple of years of sobriety. And I was a type 2 diabetic. I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, every problem that comes from, obesity and just years and years of alcohol abuse, cirrhosis of the liver, all of these things. And I started to slowly battle back at that point. Once I was on an oxygen machine at the end of that, just to tell you how bad it was. I'm lucky that I lived through it. I would go for walks in the neighborhood, carrying the little oxygen tank with me with a little tube in my nose. And I slowly just started to walk more. And I was watching what I ate then. And in that first year, I lost over 100 pounds.
Wow.
And somewhere along the line, I got it in my head on one of my walks where I said, I wonder if I can run. I don't know where the thought came from. It's never been something that I've been interested in my life. And I started doing it. I would go out for my walks and I would just try to see if I could run from this telephone pole to that telephone pole. And there was something that started to happen to me in those moments where the running didn't feel great physically, but it did something to me mentally. And as is the case I can't speak for all alcoholics, but for myself, I tend to get really obsessed with things and do them to death. And in that second year of sobriety, I got it in my head that I was going to run a marathon. And I trained and I ran my first 5K and I ran a 10K, I ran a 10 miler. And that very first year that I started running, I signed up for the Newport Marathon and I completed my first marathon.
Oh my gosh.
And it was an interesting experience. You know, a lot of people ask me about that. I had a friend ask me about it recently, she just ran her first marathon. Congratulations, Kat. And she was asking me what kind of emotions I had afterwards, because she was just overwhelmed and grateful and this and that. And I remember finishing that marathon and being disappointed with myself, because this was the mental state that I was still in.
Wow.
I had trained to complete it in a certain time, and I really crashed around the 22-mile mark, and I was disappointed in myself that I didn't finish the way I wanted to.
Mm.
And these are things that I've worked on over the past 7 years. I got myself involved with a great therapist, and I do therapy work with her, coupled with sound meditation. It's
Mhm.
been something that's been completely life changing for me. And she has been so helpful to help me transform my whole mindset, about life and thinking about the future and how I think about the past. And working with her has been great. Of course, one of the big topics we would always go to in my therapy sessions are food and diet and my weight. I've spent the past 4 or 5 years just yo-yoing this 60 pounds of weight. I'll work really, really hard and I'll lose 60 pounds. And then, I'll attribute it to things in life. Life gets stressful or this, that, the other thing. But in hindsight, I don't necessarily think that was always the case. Those were just excuses. And then I would put that 60 pounds back on. And then I would get disgusted and frustrated with myself. And then I would take it off again. And I've tried every diet that's out there. Well, maybe not every diet, but all of the big ones. The Weight Watchers. There was this one called the Running Diet that had an app. I've tried Noom. I've tried just counting my calories. All of these things, and I'd have initial success at first, but it was never anything that I could maintain. I couldn't get these habits to stay in place. And actually, through working with you, I realize now why a lot of that is. But these things would come up with my therapist, and she always had something in the back of her head, like, I wonder what's going on with you physiologically with this, because she teaches a lot of mindfulness, and she'd always try to get me to talk about, what's going through your head when these things happen, because I just would have these terrible binge episodes. It would seem like anytime I would put carbs or sugar in my body, it would just trigger these binge episodes that I seemingly had no control over. It reminded me a lot of my drinking.
Mm.
And they talk in the AA program about these sort of mental blank spots that we have that precedes having that first drink. And I felt like I was having those with food, where I wouldn't plan to do this, or I wouldn't set out to do it, and it would almost just seemingly happen, which is just a terribly frustrating and terrifying thing. So she would bring that up. I wonder what's going on, and and we got on the topic of nutritionists. She said maybe working with a nutritionist might be a good thing for you. And we had, in a couple of sessions, I got it in my head. I said, I wonder if there's a nutritionist out there that works with alcoholics, with addicts. And you're right. I did some Google searching, and you have a wonderful website, and you specifically address. I mean, you're called the addiction nutritionist, and I went, this is amazing. This is too good to be true. I don't know that there's anyone else out there that necessarily advertises having a specialty in this. And that's when I decided to reach out to you, and try to start this new journey. Because that's another thing that I've learned over these past 7 years is I can't do everything myself. I'm a terribly stubborn person. I used to have a very hard time asking other people for help, but the fact of the matter is I don't know everything, and I really need to rely on other people. So, luckily I got to that. I've been to that point in my life for years where I knew enough to say, I can't figure this out myself. I need help. And that's when I first consulted with you.
Yeah. Oh man. So much good stuff in there. I was writing down a couple notes of things I wanted to ask you follow-up questions about.
Sure.
because, there's so many reasons why I'm doing this podcast. One is to be able to share inspiration with people like your story, which is just, amazing. And also share some value about specific things that people can do, but also for them to hear things on this podcast with people like you and other guests where they go, oh, that's me too. Because I get so many phone calls from people that feel like they're the only person in the world that are dealing with whatever it is they're dealing with. And so I just want people to know that other people out there are sharing that experience. When you talked about, starting to walk and you had the little oxygen hose and that sort of thing, do you remember what that felt like? I'm curious about like how far did you need to dig deep to just get yourself outside with your oxygen tank to go on a walk? Like, do you remember what that experience felt like to you?
I wish I could remember it more, to be honest with you, because the painful moments in life when things get good, it's so easy to forget how hard those things were. Mm-hmm. And I don't specifically remember, but I know it was not easy. Mm-hmm. Part of it, and nothing against my parents. I love them to death. But I found myself in my late 30s living back with my parents, and some of it was a good reason to get out of the house and to have some alone time for myself, Yeah. And it was awkward. It was a little bit painful at first because I still had swelling in my legs and things of that nature. But something had happened to me in particular when I got into the AA program and found a sponsor and started working the steps, where I had the desire to live again. And I realized that if I was going to be of use in this world, to others, that I couldn't keep doing the things that I did that got me there, and I couldn't do them at the weight or the level of health that I was at.
Yeah. Oh man, that's incredible. Yeah, I mean, just hearing you say that you had the desire to live again, that's what an incredible motivation. And not just to live, but to live to serve others too, right? To be able to be an example to them. I was just getting this visual picture of you running from, electrical pole to electrical pole, like you were saying, to just do those short little sprints. And it's like, I could almost feel in that moment, like what it may have felt inside of you, like the mental dialogue too, of like, just do it. Like, I can see the pole, just run to the pole. And like, I think that's a really important thing to point out, because so many people that I work with tend to have this common theme of, this is just really common in recovery, right? Like they don't trust themselves. Mm-hmm. And that is such a foundational piece of recovery, is learning how to rebuild trust with yourself. And so I think and the way that we do that is by making these tiny little small commitments and then following through. So you just running from one pole to the next and going, dang, I did it, like probably was a big self-confidence boost. Maybe in your opinion, you didn't feel like it was enough at the time, listening to you talk about how you were disappointed with your first marathon run and stuff. But I still imagine it was like some of those, just putting one foot in front of the other and doing those little small things that built up, those steps for you to move on to the bigger things. Right.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. No question about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's so great. I also wanted to ask you about the sound meditation. You mentioned it, but what is that and what did you gain from that?
Oh, yeah. There's wonderful stories surrounding this as well. Early on in my recovery, someone that I met had just moved to this area from California. It was someone that I was sponsoring for a period of time. And when they were out there in California, they had come across these ideas of sound baths. They had attended a few of those, and he was telling me about them, and he had all of the I don't know if I call it equipment. He had all of the instruments, the gongs and these crystal sound bowls and everything. And he's the one, Pete, who introduced me to sound baths. Mm-hmm. And I helped him. He was at a period in his life where he wasn't working and he was doing some of this stuff on the side. And I would help him set these up. And he went around and he did them at some local community centers and some yoga studios. And Mind you, I at that time, it was not alone time in my head was not the best place for me.
Mm.
I always needed a distraction or noise in the background or to be doing something. And the thought of laying still and meditating or doing anything like that was not really an appealing thing.
Mm.
But the there was an allure to it, the way he described it and the way he talked about how it helped him and enhanced his spirituality. And so I started helping him set up and going to these sound baths. And it's really just an experience of going to a place, laying down on the floor on a yoga mat or some other comfortable position, and you have a practitioner who has a combination of gongs and crystal sound bowls, and he had a flute and rain sticks and all of these things. And it's just a production generally of about 45 minutes to a little over an hour. And I found that meditating with those sounds there was something that I could do. There was something about the sounds that would sort of disrupt the negative self-talk that I was experiencing at that time.
It made it more approachable for you.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Yes. And there'd be periods where it was quiet, and then the gong would come and just sort of shake you out of that quiet period. And it was just so wonderful. And not too long after that, I was going down to a gong event that they were having down in Little Compton, Rhode Island, and I came across a woman, Linda, who is my therapist now, who was doing this outside of a little coffee house down there. They were just doing an outdoor gong session, and I had done computer work for her years ago. I had owned my own computer tech shop, and I did a lot of on-site work for people in the area. And I remember going to her place. It's called the Renaissance Barn. It's this beautiful location that she has. When I was very much an active drinker, I probably had gone there while I was drunk because I used to work drunk all the time, which is something I can't even fathom nowadays. And I remember going down there and having no concept of what was going on in this place, no idea what it was used for. And it turns out she does some mental health counseling, and she's a practitioner of sound meditations and sound therapy. So I reconnected with her at that time, and we started to see each other to do therapy and follow it by setting an intention and doing a sound meditation. And I've been doing that now consistently for about probably 3 years, maybe a little longer than that. And it has truly been life-changing for me. It's really wonderful.
Man, that's so cool. I've heard about it, and my co-host Nikki, who helps me to host a lot of these episodes. I don't know if she's like a practitioner of it, but I know she does it and incorporates it into some of the things that she does. She's like a yoga therapist, meditation, mindfulness specialist. So I've been familiar with it. I'm curious, do you have any idea if that's something you have to be in the room with, or can that be done over Zoom? Do you know sessions like that?
I do know because when COVID hit, we weren't doing in-person meetings anymore. And I asked her, do you think there's any way we could do this via Zoom? And I set her up with a laptop, and I have some nice microphone recording equipment. And I set her up with that. And for a good period of probably about a year, we did it over Zoom. There's a setting in Zoom where you can set, actually, I see it in the top left corner of my Zoom window here, original sound for musicians, it's called. And you can turn that on so it removes any of the filtering that the Zoom audio does. So it's for when musicians play gigs over Zoom, you don't, get the background noise filtering. And we did that, and I would put my headphones on, and it was, it's not as good as being in person because you don't fully feel the sounds, but it's not a bad version of it. And also there are tons of apps that are out there, like Insight Timer and some of these others, specifically for meditation, where if you just do some searches on there, there are the crystal bowl baths and gong meditations. So you can even just do that right through your own cell phone nowadays.
Oh man, that's so
And
cool. And I just love, I mean, I can really, it resonates with me what you were saying. Like meditation can feel really unapproachable because A, you don't want to be alone with your thoughts, or B, it's just so stinking uncomfortable to sit there and like, slowly try to be mindful of what's coming into my head and analyzing it, but filling that space with the
Mhm.
sound from the sound baths and the gong. It sounds like you're somewhat occupying some of those things that make you uncomfortable. So it creates more of a continuum of progress for you to be fully immersed in that experience instead of just like, okay, I'm jumping into meditation, which can be so intimidating.
Oh, definitely.
So
And I
yeah,
think a lot of people have misconceptions about it as well. I've
yeah,
heard so many people say, well, I can't empty my mind. I can't stop all of the thoughts that are going on in there. They think that's the ultimate
right,
goal of meditation.
right.
I know for me, that's not the case.
Mhm.
Some meditations are better than others, but letting those thoughts sort of run rampant, I often figure out solutions to problems, or sort of figure out what to do with like a personal situation in life. And then I've had others that are peaceful, where my mind nearly shuts down, and then I've had others that are just complete chaos and don't feel great. And that's just the myriad of things that we experience in life. And I always tell people it's okay. Especially when I'm working with sponsees and I'm trying to get them into meditation. There's all different kinds of meditation.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing. So let's circle back around to where we were, talking about entry point into that nutrition piece. So when we first started working together, I kind of went back through some of my notes about our sessions and was revisiting some of the things that you originally had reached out for. One of the things that you put in your initial consultation form as a goal was that you wanted to build a healthy relationship with food. And I did an assessment on you, a nutrition assessment that gives us really great information about what symptoms you may be manifesting
Mhm.
based off of either lack of nutrient intake or your body's not absorbing the nutrients, which you may want to talk about or not talk about. But when you first came to me, you had a gallbladder. Now you don't have a gallbladder, and so there was lots of issues around metabolizing fat. But one of the main things from the assessment and that sort of thing was that the way that your body handled sugar, so your blood sugar handling,
Mhm.
was literally off the charts. So you could get a maximum score of 14 on that chart, and yours was at a 21. And then we reassessed you in October, and you were just down to a 4, which is really very, very low. So I'd love to, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, where like your desire and relationship with things like sugar and processed carbs felt similar to you, the way that your relationship with alcohol was. So I'd love to kind of explore that a little bit in terms of what you were feeling. How did that look in your life? And then, when did that start to change and where's it at now?
Sure. And first of all, thank you for doing that testing as part of the process. Taking that test, and I know we did the testing with the nail clippings and the hair,
Yeah.
because that information was information that I was missing, that
Mm,
I never got from my primary care physician or anything like that. So I knew something was wrong. I didn't know it was related to blood glucose regulation or that it was related to insulin resistance.
mm,
And those two things were huge in figuring out a lot of stuff for myself.
mhm,
I thought that I had been type 2 diabetic, and I thought that after losing all of that weight that it would just go away.
mm,
And yes and no. My A1C numbers may be great, but then throughout our process as well, you had me testing my blood sugar, and my fasting blood sugar was running high. You
mhm.
know, um, and that does come down a lot to, I think, a lot of the damage I did to myself during my drinking days. I don't know the full science of it, but I do know that when you drink, all of those carbs and things turn into sugars in your body. I've heard it said that drinking alcohol is the most efficient way to just jam pack your body with sugar.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine, coming out of 20 plus years of drinking, what damage my body had in handling those things. Back when I was a drinker, I would like carbs. I would want carbs, pizza and French fries and those kinds of things when I was drinking. But I had absolutely no desire whatsoever when I was an active alcoholic for sweets. I didn't care for cakes or candies or chocolates or sugars or anything of that nature. And that only seemed to start after I got sober, where I just had these intense cravings for sweet things. And that was a new experience for me. I had never been a dessert person.
What were you craving specifically?
Oh, anything, candy bars, cakes, anything sugary drinks, full sugar soda, anything. Oh yeah, ice cream. Yeah, and I'm lactose intolerant, so ice cream is never a good choice for me.
Double whammy.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I didn't understand really physically what was going on there. In hindsight, with some things that I've learned, that's what it was. My body was used to having those kinds of sugars, and it's not getting it this other way. So a craving started to exist of getting sugar into my body. And then I think perhaps when I would put those sugars in, it triggered some of the same physical mechanisms of, well, I need more of this. So, again, to relate it similar to drinking, there'd be that mental obsession for it beforehand of, boy, I really could go for a candy bar right now. And then once I would have it, my body would go, you need more of that. You need more of that right now. And
so similar to alcohol, you're searching for satisfaction that you actually never reach.
Exactly. Yes. Yep. Yeah. And I'm thinking too, that even prior to my alcohol use and everything, that I may have had some of these issues, physiologically, just because I've never, even when I was younger, I never knew what the experience of being full or satisfied was from food. Never existed.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And that's, you're not alone in that, right? Like I talk to a lot of people that have a very similar experience, and that's really just hormones. It's your hormones needing to be regulated so that those areas of your brain that light up and say, I'm full, we've had enough, which would be leptin, are triggered, and then you get the sensation of being full, and that's what triggers the you to stop eating. And then over time, as your body uses that energy, it triggers ghrelin, which increases your hunger, signals you to start eating again, and it just creates this process between ghrelin goes up, you eat, leptin comes up, you're full, you stop. And that's a struggle. That is a struggle for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just from a science perspective too, so that the listeners understand, you said you had been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which is the total manifestation of blood sugar instability. But even though you had done so much work to sort of reverse that diabetes, what we discovered was that you still had a level of insulin resistance. And basically what insulin resistance is that your cells need a stream of energy to come into the cell so that you can have energy, right? And so if you eat a little bit of carbs or a little bit of sugar or whatever, your blood sugar goes up, and then insulin is released from your pancreas. And the purpose of that is to bring literally the sugar out of your bloodstream and, relocate it into the cells to be used as energy. But what happens is when we're drinking all the time, or we're eating too many carbohydrates that our body doesn't like, or we're consuming too much sugar, we're like trying to shove this insulin in the cell. And eventually, because the body's always going to react to everything that you're doing, it senses that imbalance of there's too much insulin. How are we going to respond to this? And the cell shuts itself off. So now insulin cannot unlock the cell and get inside, which stops literally the glucose and nutrients from getting inside the cell. And so you will often hear people say, I am eating all the time, but I'm starving all the time. And they cannot seem to understand that, like, how can that be? I'm eating food and I'm starving all the time. It's because even though you're eating food, your cells are still starving because they're sitting there totally undernourished because they're not getting the energy that's being used. So they're signaling the brain more. And that is a huge piece of the puzzle with alcohol as well as sugar. And as you know, and a lot of people listening probably know, that sugar, ultra processed carbs, and alcohol are all lighting up the same part of the brain. So those addictive pathways that we can, unmask or trigger or whatever to give us that release of serotonin and dopamine, the feel good hormones, it's all the same. The biology is basically the same. So it's a very common experience, what you've gone through of being in recovery and even saying I wasn't a sweets person. Now, all of a sudden you're a sweets person.
Yeah. That was a real light bulb moment for me. Having you explain to me sort of the mechanism and what's going on with insulin resistance. I had never done any research on that. And it was new information to me. And, the fact that my body wasn't getting all of the fuel out of those calories explained a lot. It went, well, that's why, I'll eat 2,000 calories and it doesn't seem like enough. It's never enough.
Yeah.
And it made so much sense to me suddenly too, on why any of these other diets that I've tried didn't work, because eating 1,200 calories a day, that was one of the diets that I went on, was trying to do 1,200 calories a day. That's even worse for me to do, because then, I'm not getting the fuel that I need. And
it's totally exacerbating the nutrient deficiencies.
And it would drive me nuts, because I am a very strong-willed person. I am very self-driven. And I would always go, why can't I figure this thing out? And I could do it for 2 months, 3 months, and I would have some success, but then my body would revolt and I would just fall back into these binge cycles. And then it's just binge on food, guilt, shame, and remorse, binge on food, guilt, and it was just so frustrating, frustrating.
Yeah. So one of the first things that we did was, it wasn't for you necessarily about eating less. It was about eating a little bit different, just introducing foods you wouldn't normally eat, or just bringing more of a focus to certain foods. And so increasing your protein and having a conversation around protein was one of the foundational things that we did. Do you remember that when we first started, having those discussions, and what it looked like to start shifting the foods that you were eating and trying to shoot for more protein?
Oh, I remember. Yeah. I had a lot of resistance to it.
Did you? Oh, tell me why.
Oh, well, my body was calling for those carbs and the pizza and those kinds of things. And, it's like, I know what the right thing to do is, but it's hard to do. And, there's always resistance to any kind of change, but I knew that I was open to at least trying. That's why I reached out to you, and you called me out on my stuff a couple of times, because you would give me homework to do here and there, and I didn't always put the full effort into it. And it's good. It's good when that happens, because I just try to grow as a person nowadays, and all of those things help me to get to a better place. And it leads us to like the conversation that we had last week, where I said, I'm doing all of this working out now and strength training. Let's start talking again about how much protein I need to eat, right?
And you brought it up, not me.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's so funny. Yeah. I mean, resistance is natural and change is hard. But one of the tactics we use in the beginning is that I didn't say like, hey, Doug, we're going to cut back on your carbs and your sugar. I never do that with people, because if you start out with that, you create more resistance. And that's a really scary thing if you're used to consuming those. So instead you go, yes, still go ahead and eat those things if you want them, but let's bring in the protein, because that often is so stabilizing to your hunger and satiety hormones, as well as your blood sugar, that it just tends to start to naturally reduce some of those other foods. Would you say that was your experience? Like, did you start to notice your cravings drop a little bit when you just simply introduced more protein?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I was still struggling with these binge episodes, but starting to substitute the proper things, I definitely would notice a change. Small at first, definitely small at first. But I remember when we first started working together too, I don't remember how long into it, but we had done a lot of the different testing, and there were some supplements you were having me start to take. And I think we were easing into me getting the proper amount of protein and bitter greens and some of these other things, cutting down on the fake sugars and the diet sodas. I was drinking, 6, 7 diet sodas a day at the time. And I remember that was probably the first time I had an experience of being full and satisfied.
Wow.
And I think I shared that with you. It was short-lived because I sort of fell back into a bit of a binge cycle. But every one of these steps is a learning experience, and I needed to feel that for the first time and go, oh, wait, is this what people actually feel this? Like, this is a real thing? Because I didn't believe it. I really didn't believe it.
Oh, I believe you when you say that, because I can remember you being like, I think you even told me a number of times of like, I'm here and I'm doing this, but I don't know if it's going to work.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's so fascinating. Yeah. So when I had wrote down diet soda on my paper here, because I wanted to ask you about that. Because that's a super common issue. Some people will tell you they just struggle with soda, but it is very often, very specifically diet soda. So if you were drinking 6 or 7 a day, what changed for you? How did you cut back? What happened there? Right.
Well, you told me to.
But how are you able to execute that?
And you explain the why of it. I thought I was doing myself a favor drinking diet sodas, 0 calories.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that those fake sugars could make you crave sweet stuff.
Yeah.
I really didn't. And that was a process as well, because Erin and I both Erin's my wife, for those that don't know, absolutely one of the most wonderful people I've ever met in my life. She's fantastic. We're both fans of diet soda, and always have it in the house. And that was really just sort of a willpower thing, just sort of making the shift. And one of the things that I thought was great was, you suggested this electrolyte drink. Can I say the name of it on here?
Okay, go for it. Maybe they'll sponsor me.
Right. The LMNT drink. And I said, well, I'll give that a try. And for whatever reason, I love the flavor of the watermelon one. If LMNT is listening, you can send me the watermelon salts. I have a subscription with you.
Yes.
And so that is almost exclusively what I drink now. I drink water. I drink the watermelon LMNT. And I do occasionally have a diet root beer or a diet ginger ale, but it's probably like, 2 a week, if that.
So Gatorade, because I had on here, because the reason we switched to the LMNT, which for those of you that are listening, it's the letters LMNT. So it sounds like you're saying element, but if you go to look it up, it's the letters LMNT. And they may still have a special going on where you can literally get a sample pack of all their flavors for just $5 because you're covering the shipping and handling. So if you are totally into Gatorade or some of these other, Powerade or whatever, please don't sue me for saying this. That is a wonderful swap, is you can still get the electrolytes from this other, they come in individual packets. Yours favorite is the watermelon. My favorite is the citrus, which is similar to like lemon lime Gatorade. But yeah, that was one of the first things that we switched over. And so just by doing that, you eliminated like probably 33 grams of sugar per serving, because I think the average Gatorade's got 30 something grams of sugar and LMNT has none.
Yep. Yeah. And it's a wonderful flavor too. And you just shot yourself in the foot there. Gatorade's never going to sponsor you now.
I know. I wouldn't let them anyway.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah. But LMNT, if you're listening, I'll take any free packs for me and Doug and anybody else.
It's a great product. It really is.
Yeah, it is. And it's really salty.
Yeah.
But you can water it down. So if you love that salty flavor, you just put the amount of water in there that they suggest, but I tend to water it down more, which makes it last longer and lessens the salty flavor a little bit, but you just kind of do it to your liking,
Yeah. No, I enjoy it. And I'm not sure if I finished answering the question, but having that suitable substitute made it very easy for me to stop drinking the other things. Really, that's what it came down to.
It really is just about swapping stuff out. Did you ever did you try the Lakanto monk fruit drops?
I never did.
Oh,
I never
okay.
did. Yeah.
Some people that miss the sweetness of the Gatorade, I have them put Lakanto monk fruit drops, just a couple drops in there.
Mm.
Monk fruit is a natural sweetener, but so far in the studies, it has been shown to not impact blood sugar. So it is like exponentially better than real sugar. It's much sweeter than real sugar. So you literally only need a drop or two, and it makes things just as sweet. But that's usually what I recommend to people that's another really good swap. Yeah. So, we started working together March 2nd of last year, 2022. So
Okay.
we're really close to a year now. After we started making these changes, do you remember how soon it was that you actually did start to feel like, hey, maybe this is working, maybe I'm making progress, things feel different?
I'm terrible with timelines. A lot of times I'll always say, I can't remember if that happened yesterday or last year.
Yeah.
So I'm not really sure, but I feel like it was probably somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks in, I
Yeah.
think. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and everybody's experience is different, but I look at you now, talk to you now, look at you now, and I don't feel like you're the same person. Like you are the same person. You're still like kind and funny and like you're a dream client. I love meeting with you. It's always a joy. One of my favorite things about you is even despite the skepticism that you had in the beginning, you've never given up. The willingness has always been there. The willingness to even say, I don't know if this is going to work, but I want to get better. I want to do better. So I'm going to keep trying. And I like to tell people there's no failure, just feedback.
Yeah.
But even you sort of feeling like maybe you were failing on a few fronts, you still kept going. And so I don't know if that's like part of who Doug is. I don't know if you feel like that's something you had to develop. Is there anything you could say to speak to that?
Well, I've learned, in these past 7 years of my sobriety that failure is one of the gifts of life. It really is. Without that, there's so many things that would have never been opened up to me.
Mm.
And that being said, you have to get over the fear of failure,
Mhm.
and once you get there, there are so many lessons to be learned from the times when you're taking 2 steps back.
Mhm.
And I've learned to, reluctantly learned to embrace it.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I think embracing failure is key. I think it's key to success and into a really well-rounded recovery. I'm an all paths girl. So when somebody tells me, hey, here's how I got sober, here's my recovery journey, I accept all of it. I do not believe in the dogma that there is only one way.
Mhm.
And so one of the conversations I've had in previous episodes and what I like to talk to people about in recovery is like, what are the pillars that are of your recovery? What do you feel
Mhm.
are the things that really consistently hold up your recovery? So much so that maybe if you start to notice one getting a little shaky, or it's a habit that you have lost a little bit of focus on, maybe it can impact your recovery or impact other parts of your health and wellness journey. So you've shared that you've done AA and running and sound meditation, but just in your own words, I'd love to hear if you could sum it up to what the pillars of recovery are for you.
Sure. And let me just take one step back too and say, I think it's great, and I agree with you that there are many different paths to recovery.
Mm.
There are a lot of different programs out there. There are a lot of different ways to do it, and what works for me isn't necessarily going to work for someone else. I can only speak to my own experience.
Totally.
And AA happened to work for me. And some of my pillars of recovery are number one, still staying involved in the program of AA. I actively sponsor people. I still get to a few meetings a week. I still talk to my sponsor. He started a group. There's a group of four of us, four men who get together. We do it over Zoom every other Sunday. And we follow this format. It's called the Steel on Steel format. You can look it up online. And we go through these just 7 different areas of our life. It's not even necessarily recovery related anymore. And we talk about these areas of our life and how we're doing with, our relationships, with work, with our recovery, and these other items. And we give each other advice. And I think that's something that might be rare nowadays, particularly with men. And it's been such a great experience for me doing that with my friends. They're my friends now.
Thank you so much for bringing that up too, that it's, I think it can be harder for men to get into those situations of close relationships where you're talking about things that are more than just the surface. And so I think that's incredibly brave. And I love that I love that you brought that up, because I want the people to be listening to know that not only is it okay, you should absolutely go do that, and obviously I'm going to give the mic back to you because I want to continue to hear about your pillars, but I just constantly hear and see the theme of being committed to growth,
Mhm. Yeah.
And it sounds like I can only imagine. I know the importance of relationships and how we really do grow in the context of our relationships. So it's not surprising to me that that's a pillar for you.
Yeah. This is my second chance at life, and I don't want to waste it, which is great. One of the things I found for me, that's another pillar of my recovery, is having a routine. It's very important for me, and this coming from a person who used to think I loved the chaos,
Really?
but now, and because we've worked on this together, I have a very detailed to-do list. I have a weekday to-do list and a weekend to-do list. And it's detailed down to the point of, brush my teeth in the morning, get my clothes ready, pack my food for work. And I find it really sets me up for success for the day. These things might seem really minuscule, but at the start of some mornings, my head can very quickly go to a place of, oh my God, I've got to get this done. And I've got this going on at work, and I've got this. And having just this list where I can wake up and within a 10-minute period, cross 10 things off my list, feed the cats, check the cat's water fountain, this and that. It gives me this feeling of, oh my goodness, I've accomplished so much, I can tackle this day. And
from a physiological perspective, you have released a ton of dopamine just doing that. And just so listeners know, because I know this and Doug knows it, it's an actual list. It's not a list in your head. You have a tangible list.
I have it on my cell phone. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. And I have found, once I started getting that technique in place, that it's incredibly helpful for me. So that's one. Another one, and you mentioned this, is running. And really, since working with you and losing some of this weight and everything, I have this whole new enjoyment of running that I have never experienced. It's been so incredible lately. And I find with that too, I love to run to just run, but I have to set goals for myself. And just in that, I need to make sure I sign up for a few runs a year so that I have something to train for. It gives me a way to say, okay, I'm running a 5K, I got to do some speed work, or I'm going to do, the New Bedford half marathon. I've got to do this type of training, and it adds a little excitement to my life, and it adds, I don't want to say routine again because I've already said that, but it gives me some accountability to myself, if I want to meet those goals. And my current goal with that, as you know, is I'm doing the New Bedford half marathon. It's March 19th. It's about 8 weeks away. And I have wanted to break 2 hours on a half marathon for quite some time. I did it last year. I crashed the last 2 miles and I finished in 2 hours and like 2 minutes. And I was like, oh, come on. So I have to try again.
Yeah.
Another great one.
Doug.
Oh yeah. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I have never been able to be at this weight in January.
You're
ever.
like the vanishing man.
It's wonderful. It's so wonderful. Yeah. To get back under 200 pounds and feel like I can probably stay here now, it is a wonderful feeling, really
Amazing.
wonderful.
Amazing.
Meditation for me is a big one. We talked about it earlier. I'm a huge proponent of sound meditation.
Mhm.
I also do some, I don't know, I'll jokingly call it regular meditation.
Just basic.
Yeah, just some of the quiet meditation, which is good. You have helped me unlock this whole new exercise routine. If you remember when we first started working together, you would talk about that. You need to do some strength training and some of these other things. And stubborn me goes, I just like to run. That's the only one that I found that I ever like to do. And I don't know if it's, sort of now getting the nourishment that I need from food, coupled with another huge thing last year that I did was get that CPAP machine for sleep apnea, and getting a better night's sleep, and then working with you to start to adjust some of my routine, because a lot of my binges would happen in the evening. So I said, I'd love to read more books. I'd love to get to bed earlier, and we worked on that for a couple of months, and now that's become a habit. I get to bed
Yes.
at a reasonable time. I read a book, I go to sleep, and then I can get up earlier. Getting
Yeah.
up earlier and having that time before work is exactly what I needed to get these other pieces of exercise in place. And
Mhm.
now, in the past few months, I feel like I'm locked into some really good habits where I'm doing. Erin and I, we got a Peloton.
Mhm.
Her sister gifted us a Peloton, which is amazing. It's a used one, but it's awesome. And they have that Peloton app
Mhm.
where they have all other kinds of exercise available. And I've been doing a 10-minute core exercise about 5 times a week on average. I've been doing some wall yoga. There's some books out there about it because I'm not flexible at all and I need the wall to help me. And I found a book called Strong and Lean by Mark Lauren, which is a body weight strength training program that only takes a commitment of about 10 or 15 minutes each morning.
Mhm.
And I just started cycle 3 in that book. I think this is week 13 for me. I have never done a strength training program that long in my life. And
You
I've
didn't
noticed
want anything to do with strength training
nothing,
when we first
nothing to
started.
do with it.
Yeah.
And I'm starting to feel stronger. There are these exercises, particularly for upper body, that involve push-ups. I couldn't do a single push-up when I started
Wow.
this, and now I can complete, the whole minute of the exercise where I end up doing, 4 or 5 push-ups mixed in with these other activities, and
Mhm.
it's really flooring me. It really, really is. So that's become a huge thing for me. I'm getting on this other exercise routine. And I've been doing the Peloton here and there, just to sort of, I do tons of running, so
Mhm.
I don't necessarily need to, but it's been fun to get on that thing, which is good. Um, Another pillar of recovery for me definitely was trying to learn about balance in my life and what that really means. When I first got sober, and actually even when I was an active alcoholic, I was also a workaholic.
Mhm.
60 to 80 hours a week. Especially owning my own business too. Way back in the day, you almost have to in that sense. But even when I first got sober at the company I currently work for, was easily putting in 60 to 70 hours a week, and that's not good for you.
Mhm.
Well, I shouldn't say for everyone, that's not good for me.
Yeah.
And it was doing a number on me physically, and mentally, and sort of learning how I could dial that back in and work sort of normal hours was huge for me.
Mhm.
That was a huge thing for me. And I find now too, just trying to live with a purpose, to live life purposefully, and try to do things with good intentions, whether it be my artwork or the projects that I'm working on. Just really feeling connected to being alive and being connected to the world, which is
Mhm.
something that I didn't have for most of my life.
Mhm.
That feeling is important to me.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Is that all? Would you say that's all of your,
Um,
or did you have anything else you wanted to?
I guess maybe one more. If you can sort of build a team of the right people
Mhm.
around you. I started seeing a new primary care physician just before I got sober for the first time, and he was very helpful to push me to get the help that I needed. And I'm still with him.
Mm-hmm.
I have a gastroenterologist that I really trust. I have my therapist that I really trust and work well with. I have you now, where we get together for our accountability meetings, and there's some stuff that I want to work on now too, with the protein and building muscle and things of that nature. Finding my wife Erin was huge for me. Just she is the most supportive, loving, kind person I have ever met, who has given me the go ahead to do the things that I need to do to get and stay healthy. And I never really had that in my life.
That's incredible. And Doug's not just saying that for the podcast. Doug regularly talks about Erin in our sessions and has nothing but amazing things to say about her. And I will just add in there, like, as many people probably already know, choosing your partner is it's probably like the most important decision ever that you have to make in your life. And so for you to have somebody that's so incredibly supportive of all the things that you're working on, and to give you the space to grow and the space to change, and to just encourage you along the way, I think is just so priceless. So I think that's a part of your support team. That's probably one of the most important things.
That took a lot of work and therapy on myself as well, to be able to recognize what I actually wanted and needed in a partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such an inspiring story in itself, because there's so many people out there that are lonely and are wondering if they'll ever be able to find the person that is their person, for the rest of their life. And so stories like yours are really important, because it gives other people hope. Which leads me to my second to last question. If our audience is going to mostly be made up of people in recovery. And so I'd love to know if you could just share, something with them. What do you want people in recovery to know? Like, if you could think of one piece of advice, or offer some piece of hope or inspiration, what would it be?
Oh boy, that's a good one. Alcoholics and addicts are definitely some of the smartest, strongest willed people that I've ever met in my life. And it makes me realize that as sort of a group, we're very sick. It really is an illness. If I could have self-willed it away, believe me, I would have. I would say to those in recovery that, it's good to be accepting of the fact that you're a beautiful work in progress. None of it is going to come overnight. You are worth the work. If you put in the work, things will change. Doesn't happen immediately, but I can guarantee you things will change for the better if you can put in the work. I came across a phrasing recently that was forgive your younger self, believe in your current self, and create your future self. And I've really been thinking on that one for the past couple of weeks since I came across it. And I think that is just fantastic advice, not just for people in recovery, but for anyone,
Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I love that. We need to print that out and put it up somewhere. I mean, that's just incredible. And all of the things that you've accomplished, and your willingness, and, when you talk about your worth, the work, I cannot second that enough. Every single person listening, every single person on the planet, you are worth the work. And the work can be tiny little steps. The work can be standing up. If you're a couch potato and you're like, I'm so sedentary and I cannot find the motivation to get movement in, just stand up. Take a breath, know that you're alive, right? It doesn't have to be like, I'm going to go out and run a marathon. It can be, but know that you won't get to that marathon unless you first just stand up, right? So I think people are going to gain just incredible value from listening to your story. So I want to thank you for being brave enough to come on here and share it. And for you just showing up in the world as Doug every day. You are such an interesting person. Like, we just only barely touched on the things that you're working on, but this skate project, that you've been sharing with me. I can't wait for that to come out. The Sobering Sunrises coffee table book. I mean, all of this stuff is so great. So I'm going to ask you one last question, and then I want to wrap it up by just helping people to understand how they can, like, if they want to follow your journey, like when the skate project comes out, when the coffee table book comes out, if you're doing updates about your marathon running, I want to give people an opportunity to figure out how to follow you in that sense. But my final question to you, Doug, is, and this is the question that I ask everybody that comes on this podcast, is what feeds you?
I saw this question because we talked about a few of them before. And that my joke answer was, I can say, like, now legitimately food feeds me, where before it was just sort of an obsession and a binge. But in all seriousness, really nowadays, I talked about living purposefully. And for me, a lot of it is the knowledge that I finally feel like I'm becoming the person that I was intended to be. That is just such a wonderful feeling, and having hope for what the future has in store for me, and having sort of hope without fear. That definitely keeps me going, and also creativity feeds me. I wish I could put more time into it, and maybe we can start working on this as well. We've talked about it, getting my shed clean so I can do more painting and things of that nature. And again, through working with you, some of this is what got me to start kicking off some of those other projects that we talked about a little bit earlier. Learning how to skateboard again at 44 years of age, and doing it with a friend, and we're going to tell our stories about recovery and the art that I do, and the sculpture that he does, and put those together in videos. Having projects like these feeds me. Being able to create things, definitely feeds me. That Sobering Sunrises that I talk about, I'm not even sure if that's what it's going to be called, but I just came up with that quickly. But when I first got sober, sunrises were a huge thing for me. Being up at that time and seeing them, and I've taken a ton of pictures of sunrises over the past 7 years. Some of them are just spectacular, and I just want to share them with people. So I decided to put this together in a book, and it'll be available on my website. I'm hoping to have some of this stuff ready by the end of March of this year, which it's 2023 right now. And the Tiverton Trails project that we talked about, that's another project where during COVID, I painted some paintings, and I went and I hid them among the local trail, and I did some social media posts because I wanted people to get outside and to find these in the woods, and a number of people did, and I left a note in there, and we engaged on social media, and it was wonderful. And I've been meaning to do a second iteration of that, so I started working on some paintings, and I'm going to go hide them in a different trail. And
my gosh, that is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, and so I'll be getting back onto social media a little bit here and there. I kind of have to if I'm going to promote these things. It's the best free promotion that's out there. So I hope that answers the question. Creating things, not consuming things.
Creating, not consuming. I love that. And the work that you've done to get you up to this place created that space for you to unlock your creativity and step back into that space that you love being in so much. And as whenever an artist is putting something out into the world, it makes the world a better place. And it's something that you can, it's your contribution, and it can live there forever. And so I love art and creativity and all of that. It's just these projects that you're working on sound amazing, and I cannot wait to buy your coffee table book. So if what's the best place for them to connect with you if they want to follow all these projects? Would it be your blog at fingliss.com, or would it be somewhere else?
Yeah, really any of them. I'm going to start updating fingliss.com again. Coming into doing this with you, I went, oh, geez, I should really start making some updates. And probably Instagram will be the second one.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here, Doug. You're just such a special guy. I mean, you wrote, ordinary person in your bio, but I don't think you're an ordinary person. I think you're an amazing human.
Thank you.
And again, I just thank you from the bottom of my heart for joining me in this and putting this out into the world and letting me participate in the creativity of putting this podcast out into the world of your story. And I know it's going to inspire so many people. So I hope people will connect with you on fingliss.com, and I will put the link to that in the show notes of wherever this podcast or a video is posted so that people will have that handy.
Great.
Thanks, Doug. Thanks again. I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, same here. All right, take care.
Thanks.